Hello everyone, this is Dr. Aruna, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KCS Kasinadar College of Arts and Science. And now we are going to analyze what is dialectology. What is dialectology? It is the scientific study of linguistic dialect, a subfield of sociolinguistics. And it is the systematic study of dialects, that is, the study of variant features within a language, their history, differences of form and meaning, interrelationships, distribution, and more broadly, their spokenness distinct from their literary forms. The discipline recognizes all variations within the bounds of any given language. It classifies and interprets them according to historical origins, principles of development, characteristics, features, areal distribution, and social correlates. When we analyze in detail about what is dialectology, it is a scientific study of dialects dates from the mid-19th century when philologists using data preserved in texts began to work out the historical or diachronic development of the Indo-European languages. Their interest was etymological and systematic. Living dialects were seen to furnish a huge treasury of living data and phonology, lexicology, and other features of language that written text could not furnish. The linguist's task was to gather, analyze, and interpret this living body of language. And dialectology is pursued through a number of methods. The American linguist Nelson Francis describes the prevailing methods as traditional, structural, and generative. In traditional dialectology, the collection of data is the primary requirement. This entails fieldwork, the more detailed within the limits of practicability, and its presentation in the form of dictionaries, grammars, and monographs. This method Francis calls item-centered, emphasizing the individual datum and paying little attention to underlying system. In structural dialectology, the investigator seeks to find both the structure or system by which a dialect holds together or achieves synchronic identity and how it is changed by the introduction of any new feature. Since any change in the system affects every feature of it, it becomes in effect a different system whose parts are, however, diachronically connected. There is a paradoxical element here which is partly due to difficulties of definition. And next one is generative dialectology. In generative dialectology, the investigator holds that the language exists within the speaker as a competence which is never fully realized in performance. This competence lying beneath actual language as it is produced works by a series of rules which transform it into actual speech. Thus, it is the dialectologist's task to find a basic system whose rules produce as economically as possible the surface structure of actual dialect. The complexities or variations within a language may thus be traced back to a source form from which in the course of time they could by separation have developed. However, without the mass of data which traditional dialectologists have furnished, theoretical systems could not have been either proposed or refined. To study dialects, we must first decide how to determine when two similar forms of a language are merely dialects of the same language and when are they separate languages. The difference between dialect and language is not clear-cut, but rather depends on at least three factors which often contradict one another. The first criterion is purely linguistic, mutual intelligibility. Can the speakers of two different language forms readily understand one another? If they cannot, then the two forms would normally be considered separate languages, as at least by at least by linguists. If language differences cause only minimal problems in communication, there is a tendency to call the variants dialects of a single language. Such is the case with British, Australian, American English, and the English of India, all dialects of English. And the second criterion is cultural and takes into account the opinion of the speakers. Do the speakers themselves think of their form of language as a variety of a more standard form of speech? Is there a neutral or standardized form of the language that speakers look to as the norm? This is certainly true of the varieties of English spoken in the United States. Most speakers of American English would also consider American English and the English spoken in Britain, which subscribes to a slightly different standard, to be variants of a single language. And the third one, a final criterion in differentiating language from dialect, involves a language's political status, a factor that is external to the form of the language and sometimes even at variance with the culture of the speakers. Do the political authorities in a country consider two language forms to be separate languages or dialects of a single language? Extremely different, non-mutually intelligible language forms may be called dialects simply because they are spoken within a single political entity. This is all about dialectology. Thank you.